Spark series. This is the long-awaited Exit Playbook. We originally had it scheduled for the fall. We bumped it to February, and boy, are we glad. We have some amazing panelists today. My name is Diane Temple. I am the president and CEO of the Idaho Technology Council. We are the voice of industry as we continually travel the state and bring great information to all of you. So we are going to jump right in, and then, as you know, for those that are in our live audience, you're going to get to ask some questions and hopefully get the answers that you're looking from our panelists, maybe other attendees, and we'll do that in the last 15 minutes. So if you're watching this recorded and you want to be able to engage with our panelists, make sure you register so that you can attend live. With that, I'm super excited to introduce not just three experts, but also three of my friends. And we are going to learn some great information. We have Melanie Rabaki. She is a managing partner at Perkins Coie here in Boise, Idaho. We have Scott Schlang, who is the commerce banking leader. He's the Idaho market president. And Faisal Shah, he has a rich history in intellectual property law, brand protection, entrepreneurship. He is the co-founder and enterprise brand protection pioneer of Mark Monitor. I remember when all of that happened. He was the first to file Technologies Inc. and Apodex, now called Tracer. He is the co-founder of Trailhead Boise, a local co-working space. And now that we're mentioning Trailhead, also Scott and Melanie both are on the board of trustees at Trailhead. So we've got three amazing people today. So I'm going to first just kind of open it up to each of you. We're going to just hit the ground running with a great question today.
Diane,
Yes.
I have to clear the air on one thing. I'm not Bank of Commerce, I'm KeyBank, so I have to make sure I say that
Did
for
I
copyright
say, oh,
infringement
you know
issues.
what? I said commercial. I didn't actually say key bank. I should have. I said commercial banking. Sorry about that. Commercial banking leader, Idaho market president at Key Bank.
Thanks.
Thank
There you
you,
go.
Scott. Yes, I speak really fast, and I promise I didn't say Commerce Bank, but I did say commercial banking, and we will definitely set that straight for the record. Thank
Scott,
you so much,
do you have any job, Scott? I was just kind of wondering about.
Scott. Well, we're going to put him to work today as we jump into, okay, a lot of people are joining today. We've got a full audience. And what are acquirers valuing most in companies right now? I think a lot of people think about their exit strategy, what they need to do, growth, profitability, defensibility, operational maturity. What's changed about the exit environment compared to maybe 2 to 3 years ago? So let's kind of talk about the valuing most in
It's
companies.
the place.
And Rich, if I can
Hey,
get
Rich, you're
Jeez.
not on mute, buddy.
Rich,
Yeah,
if I can be
Rich.
on mute. Oh,
We can
I'm
also
sure
see
it's
your
really
camera, and you
important,
probably want
but
to cover that also.
yeah.
Well, I can start off. Um, so I don't think that the fundamentals really have changed, especially in tech, right? Because acquirers have always cared about growth, profitability, operational maturity, defensibility, all of that, right? I think what shifted is the emphasis is where they're really putting the emphasis. And a few years ago, growth rate was like the talk of the town, right? That was the headline. If your top line was moving and increasing significantly, that was the story. But now today, I think it's profitability. I mean, is this company going to be accretive? And behind that, where is if you have growth, where's the growth coming from? Are you a tech shop doing one-off projects? This is for technology companies. Do you have repeatable, predictable revenue? They're really digging in more than ever. And then, I mean, do you have a team that can execute? Because even if you're not profitable now, is there a path to get to profitability? So all of those things really play into it. I think the other thing that I was thinking about was um, it also the fundamentals may change depending on the suitor, right? And Melanie, you probably know this. If there's a company out there that is looking to acquire you for strategic purposes, they're looking at something totally different than all this stuff they're gonna put in front of them, right? So there may be something about you that's going to provide them with a competitive advantage, and that is what they're looking at versus even the operational maturity and everything else, right? So it really just depends on who is actually acquiring you.
Yeah, Faisal, I was gonna, if that's okay, Scott, if I jump in here. I was actually going to pull that thread and add to it because I 100% agree with everything Faisal said, and would pull the thread on Diane, like who's your acquirer, right? Because a private equity, equity-backed institutional is going to be interested in a different profile. Not maybe not different, but they have a different metric that they're acquiring for, right? Like they want to put their dollar in, they want to get $5 to $7 back out, right? So they're thinking of it a little bit different. So they're going to have certain things that they're looking for, like can you grow, can you scale, can you, do certain things. A corporate strategic, Faisal, where you were kind of going with it, and that's a broad umbra, right? Like what's a corporate strategic? Corporate strategic could be looking to, company A has this, amazing product, service, whatever offering, and it will take us twice as much money to do the same thing. Let's acquire them. Or it could be as simple as we're both doing the same thing. I want to take you out, so I'm willing to pay to, eat up the market share. So it really depends, like who's your acquirer. They may have different reasons for paying for the sale.
If I could add, Melanie, there's maybe one fundamental difference that has changed in the last few years. It's not necessarily in the underlying metrics of the business, but the market's changed in that the cost of capital adjusted quite a bit in the last 4 years. And I think the largest impact has been two things. One, Faisal asserting that profitability matters more than it used to. I think that's a direct correlation to some of these LBO transactions needing to be underwritten by financial providers underneath it. And they're not necessarily going to write to pre-EBITDA business in the same way that they do to a profitable business. And then secondly, I think that multiples have been tamped down to the extent that it was an LBO and that the cost of capital has changed. So people can't afford the same buy price as they did. And then underlying that, I think from a market standpoint, that agreement is not yet met, where you still have a lot of sellers who are expecting a value they heard 3 and 5 years ago and got perhaps in other exits that the market won't necessarily provide today.
Yeah, I think, sorry, not to take another swing at the ball here. I think that's absolutely true. Unless you're in, that's all true, right? And then there's the AI, which we'll get to later, Diane, right? Then there's always, like in any market, there's always that thing that defies the fundamentals. And so it also depends, what kind of seller are you, Diane? Are you a more, mainstream, Main Street, more traditional kind of a business? Or are you a sexy new, future something that like you don't even have EBITDA and you're overvalued, right? You don't even have revenue and people are paying top dollar for you. So there's those companies too.
I mean, to point
Not to be contrarian, Scott, just to say, there's a difference.
to Scott's point, I think what really has changed is the compression of the multiples,
Yep.
right? So what was 10x in 2021, maybe even prior to that, is like a 4 to 5x now, if that, right? So and everybody knows it. I think the other thing that I think that has changed, that I see has changed, is how due diligence is getting really more. I mean, companies are digging really deep into your DD, right?
Oh yeah, that's
And
changed a lot. That's a
and
great point.
and buyers are more cautious, so they're actually looking at every single thing, whereas before you might have had a less effort on the due diligence. Now it's a huge amount of work that's going into it, and you got to be ready to be able to provide all that to the acquirer.
Yeah, especially if it's insurance backed, if you got reps and warranties insurance.
So, what are some of those legal issues that a founder should fix before even pursuing, an exit or even having those like funding conversations? Like, what are some of the issues that can totally derail a deal? You talked a little bit about, an increased due diligence.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I think you're kind of hoping that the company has had really strong processes in place on so that due diligence actually is easy as they are going through the whole process. So for example, what you see a lot with even like startups is the fact that people are not you're not you're not getting you're not getting, your employees, maybe the initial employees, you may have 3 or 4 at the very start, or even like, like some outsourced developers, you're not getting their invention and assignment agreements, right? So you're kind of like, okay, that's not a big deal. We'll just do it handshake. And now when you get into due diligence, they're asking for that information, right? So you have to go back, and I mean, I've seen this happen, right? Where you have to go back to your employees, from 10 years ago, and get them to sign something that basically says you're assigning all your IP to me, and that's a little bit of a problem, because it just you have to find them, and then you have to get them to do it, and then you may have to pay money to be able to get.
Yeah, I would say you may have to pay them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think IP and stuff like that, is key. And then also, and I think Melanie, you and I talked about it. The cap table's got to be clean, right? You can't have all these informal promises that were never documented. Like, hey, I'll give you 10,000 shares. Don't worry about it. It's going to happen when we sell. And next thing you know, you got somebody coming after you, ask.
Yeah. My 10% today is worth a lot more than it was 5 years ago, right? Whenever
Yeah, you probably have other issues, Melanie, that would derail.
No, I think those are some of the big ones. And Scott, I don't know if you have stuff to add, but like, well, for the whole group, right? I'm just addressing you, Diane, as the moderator, but you hit on it, right? There's cap table and ownership. I mean, it blows my mind how we just continue to just see that being a problem with companies, but people just don't think about it, right? Because they're busy inventing their widget and focusing on the business, and they take money from folks and just do stuff and don't kind of dial that in, and they give equity away to folks because it's they think it's cheap at the front end, right? It's like, oh, I could give people equity instead of paying them, and next thing you know, you've got all, but they left and we never signed the document, and it's like, well, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean they're not on your cap table. Signing or not signing the document isn't dispositive necessarily. And then, you talked about it, Faisal, with like just, the due diligence period, right? Like you could talk to anyone and get a due diligence checklist, and get a due diligence checklist. It's going to be 90% the same thing that any buyer, financer, or whatever is going to want to look at. And like, it's not a mystery, right? It's not a secret playbook. Like what people are going to care about in due diligence might have different, pressure points that they care about, but the list is going to be practically identical from deal to deal to deal. And so, we always encourage people just like go get it. And your question, Diane, was like, okay, well, what happens? Well, they don't do that, right? Like they don't get ahead of it. They don't know the questions that are going to be asked. And so their cap table is not cleaned up. Their equity generally is not cleaned up. Their IP, they dismiss it. Like Faisal said, oh, that person's been gone for 10 years. Who cares? Well, they'll care, right? And what were some of the other ones, Scott and Faisal, we talked about as well? It's just like your accounting and your finance, just like having that stuff dialed down and in a readable form that people can digest. And then your contracts, just have them managed. Have your contracts managed. Like where are your purchase orders? Who do you actually have contracts with? Even if it's a handshake, like who are your customers? Is it a handshake? Is it on paper? You should know. And then of course, litigation. Like, right? Like you should know if people are suing you or not.
Yeah, you would think. But I think the other thing that is kind of a red flag also is in partnership contracts, right? We have partnership contracts where in the partnership contract, let's say you're doing a joint venture with a company or whatever you're doing, they might put in there that you cannot you can't assign this agreement, or this agreement becomes null and void if you're going to sell the company. And so now, next thing you know, you've got these clauses in these contracts that actually can bar you from being able to sell, and you have to go back to these partners and get them to waive that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so critical. If you're going to do a partnership, or you're going to do some kind of joint venture, or some really large vendor agreement that you're looking at it carefully, even getting, legal counsel on it so that you're not agreeing to something that can actually prevent a transaction later on.
Well, and you and Scott, this is kind of in your bailiwick, but we just closed a deal a little bit ago, and these folks had like personal guarantees, right? Like they had like some bank debt and they had personal guarantees, and like no one knew. And we're at the closing, and they're like, "How does this go away?" It's like you got to call KeyBank up and ask them that question, right? Like they're not at the party with us. Like they don't even know this is happening.
Yeah.
And they don't just go, "Oh, you sold? Okay, cool."
Yeah.
So Scott, you've been, worked with entrepreneurs for a long time in different aspects of your career in banking. What could be a turnoff to a banker? I mean, I would ask the question, when should founders start building that relationship? But I'm sure that, that answer is at the beginning, right? But when we think about banks and capital partners, is it before growth? Do they wait till they need money? Talk to us a little bit about um, your view of the process.
Yeah, it's broad. I'll do my best to kind of narrow it down. I think just to start off, though, my biggest turnoff is feet. I don't know if that was really your question or not, but um, I think that participation with the bank is
It's a
kind of
different
hit or
panel,
miss.
Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the topic?
It's a little more professional
Um,
panel.
That's the one
I
at 7 tonight.
I think it's a broad topic, and the reality is the bank is hit or miss in this process depending on when the exit comes into place. So in the early tech staging, the bank might be a moot point, especially if you're talking about pre-EBITDA or AI companies, where really the bank's only participation has been in the accounts receivable and payable section, and it's just directly payments. I think the nature of your question is more where is the bank meaningful in an exit transaction? And there I would say it probably boils down off the cuff to three things. One, some banks, KeyBank is one, not all do, but some banks can participate and can help create a process. So whereas they may not be doing the rounds, if there's an IPO coming or if they get to a position where they're a synergistic target, a good bank has a capital markets team and an investment bank that could participate. So I'd say, that's part one. Part two, if the business has gotten to a place of scale, then the bank should be a very important party as they consider transactions, either M&A themselves or they're looking to go to market. I think the bank then in that case is really critical in that they're helping to structure debt for the exact things that Melanie said, which is, I would structure a deal differently knowing an exit is imminent in the next 3 years for a business than I would if I thought they were going to be closely held for 10 years. And having a financial partner who understands those distinctions, understands what indemnifications would be a part of it, where the PGs would come into play, et cetera. I think that's a critical part. And frankly, I think it's a very overlooked part of the financial equation at the table for partnerships. I think what Melanie said is entirely right. More often than not, a lot of banks don't even have an idea the company is selling. And to me, that's an example of a bad banking relationship. The bank should be under an NDA. They should be a part of a long-term process. And they should be helping get accretive value within the company so that they're getting a multiple upon whatever accretive value comes. So to me, any dollar I can save on a 5 or a 10x is a lot of dollars for the business owner if I can communicate it that way. And then the third place, I think, and this is where a bank can be helpful, not all banks are, and there are plenty of other providers that do this, but if you're a seller, you need to be planning a wealth strategy to do tax harvesting and tax sheltering long before you get to the table to sign a deal. In the best case scenario, you're doing that 3 to 5 years before you exit. And there have been plenty that we get 6 months before because the synergistic came in, they took a phone call, they did not run a process, they're ready to get out. There's still things you can do, but I mean, ideally, you want to be ahead of that, and the bank should be a part of it.
Hey, Scott, let me ask you a question. I mean, when you're looking at a particular company, what do you look at to determine whether or not they're bankable to you? I mean, are there
Oh,
certain
yeah.
things you're looking at?
Yeah, I'll answer that two ways. The bankability part is simple. Do you have a pulse and do you want to make a deposit? I mean, that's from the starting place, just to be kind of
Are you
trite
breathing?
about it. That's easy, right? Do you want to be able to initiate payments? Do you need checkbook? Do you need those kind of capabilities for treasury? So that's the first part is any bank can accomplish those things. Hopefully that's not too hard. Where that might be more conflicted is if you have your umbra on the cap table is obfuscated in some cases. You need a bank that has the ability to navigate those courses. But the second part of the question is, I think, at what point is a company lendable where the bank can be more meaningful for them? And that's complex to answer, not because I want to be evasive, but it depends on the industry. Sometimes we are looking at ARR, sometimes we're looking at the marketability of the business in the future because we're looking at it from an investment banking viewpoint. And so its enterprise value is a lot more important than in that case than their cash flow. But I think the simple answer would be in most cases, most financial institutions who aren't taking an equity interest in the lending, which I think SVB does really well through warrants. That's a kind of a different modality than most banks do. But most institutions are looking for a company that has a few years of EBITDA, not necessarily net profit, but they have EBITDA. And that I think is hard. I often meet with very good companies that have grown a lot. They haven't got to a place where they've been able to store enough money into the coffer to create an EBITDA position. And then they're looking for a senior tranche of debt at a lower cost of capital, obviously. And we're not there yet, and we're kind of feel inert. For me as a banker, that's the hardest position to be in because I see the value. They have a great carger. I can see the future. I just I think what people fail to realize is my risk profile is so low that I basically cannot miss with an investment we make from a financial institution view. So, just to make a quick math, if I do a $1 million loan for a business, which we would all probably consider to be not that much money at the end of the day, if I took a loss on that for whatever reason, I have to produce another $33 million worth of good debt in order to replace that one transaction. That's how low my risk profile is. So hopefully that answers it, Faisal.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of companies that are looking to get loans as opposed to taking more equity because they don't want the dilution, right?
Yeah.
So as
Yeah.
they're looking around, I mean, probably KeyBank is probably not in that world. But there are certain banks that are catering to startups, companies.
Yeah, SVB is a good example. They're going to give warrants on future value as a way that they lend. And they're still doing that. There's First Republic did something similar to that. Obviously, they don't exist in the same way. Um,
So let's talk about the Idaho ecosystem. I know that all three of you have mentored entrepreneurs. You have given a lot of your time to help coach uh, business owners in the Idaho ecosystem. What are some of the gaps that holds back more exits from getting across that finish line? Is it capital, talent, market access?
Well, to be direct, I think it's probably capital. Um, I think, I mean, all that matters, right? Capital, talent, mentorship, access. But I mean, capital really is the fuel that drives that engine, that startup engine, right? And everybody pretty much depends on it. I mean, we got great talent in this market, great mentors. We got good market access, but the capital can drive that too, right? Without good sufficient capital being deployed, you're going to be running on fumes. So I do think that capital is really key. I think we finally are starting to see not only other funds coming in here to invest in Idaho, but we also have um, funds like Capital 11, right, and others that are finally coming, kind of the companies that are really starting to help some of the startups here in town. So I
Faisal?
do think, yeah.
Could I ask you to, I think capital is this really big word with a lot of different meanings. Can you kind of define the places in which the capital investment isn't there in the same way that you think needs to be?
Well, I mean, there's the stack is, and when you're looking at a startup, I mean, there's always the it starts with the founder. Does the founder have enough money to actually put into the company, right? If the founder doesn't have money, usually what the founder does is goes to family and friends, right? And if your dad and mom don't want to put money in your company, you should really start thinking about whether or not you want to move forward with this, right? You've got that issue, right? So you got the friends and family, and you got family members are above there. Then you got the angels, right? The people in town that have sufficient capital to deploy here. And then above that, you've got the super angels, and then you've got institutional investors, and then you've got the PE firms, right? So kind of there's like a whole stack of capital
Yeah.
that's and in there somewhere, you've got your lenders, right? The key banks of the world that might come in and actually lend to you if you can't get any of these any of this to deploy capital. So I mean maybe it's a SBA loan or something. But at the end of what I'm talking about is uh, um, you probably can. I think here in Idaho you could probably get and there's quite a few angels that you can get to come into your company. And then I was talking more from an institutional standpoint, because when you have angels, you might get an initial, round of funding, but they're not sitting there and providing you with follow-on funding, right? So, and neither is your mom and dad, because if they're going to be pretty much, they're going to be out of money, and they'll be like, no, you've got to do this on your own. So now you're looking at the institutional investors, right, that are going to put money in, and then they're going to follow on with additional money. So the bottom line is you really need that level here, I think, because you're probably going to, for growth, you're probably going to need additional capital beyond the capital round that you had initially gotten. So, you got A, B, C, D rounds on that, at that level. So my point is, hey, look, you can go out and get funding here to a certain amount and a certain limit. But when you're talking about institutions, you really need them to be a part of what you're doing, because they can follow on with additional funds. If that makes, is that what you're looking for, Scott? I mean,
Yeah, I think that helps define it better. Yes. Otherwise, it's kind of amorphous, but yes, I think that helps.
I would say Diane, if we're still on this one, I have like a teeny bit to add to it. If that's, I always have like an unpopular answer to this question, because I think Faisal, like with what you're saying, everyone like wants to hunt venture capital, right? Like they think they know what that means. But like a problem that's not necessarily unique to Idaho is that venture capitalists today, as we sit here, aren't doing deals that are less than, let's say, 5 to 10 million, right? Like, and a lot of the companies need 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. So it's kind of the valley of death, right? It's that point where, the company is pre-revenue or barely revenue, not cash flow. And really what they need is, 1 million to 5 or 6 million. And unless you're part of the club, right? Like unless you already have people who funded you and can write those kinds of checks, it's difficult to go get those checks, right? It's difficult to just kind of like be out there and be like, I need 5 million. Because in the valley, it's going to be hard to like circle, or in the state for that matter, like the whole state, right? Like this isn't unique to the Treasure Valley. But by the way, it's not unique to like Utah or Silicon Valley,
It's worse,
right?
Melanie, I would say, in some of the bigger markets where they have more to splash, that valley gets wider, right?
Yeah, it gets wider. And like we see all the examples of like companies that get funded, but what you don't see is that for every one that got funded, there's 100 there, not 10. You know what I mean? So like I think the problem is the same. And so Diane, I think that like capital's definitely, we need that. But what we also need is fundable companies, right? Like companies that are fundable, companies that aren't, arrogant about their needs, like like the stuff we talked about earlier, like they do have all these other things dialed in, their cap tables clean, their IPs dialed in, they have a narrative that makes sense, you know what I mean, they are ready to like share their narrative, because like money doesn't want to fix your problems, money wants to be part of the growth going forward. You know what I mean? They don't want to fix the stuff that you didn't care enough to dial in early, and that's part of the problem. So like Faisal, you say like friends and family, it's like, well, I mean, like, how much can they fund and how much are they going to continue funding, going forward, right? And so that to me is the capital problem, right? It's like who's the group that can write those kind of mid to higher seven-figure checks before you're ready to go get the institutional money. But when you get past that point, man, like investors are like, I just said this to somebody last night, they're like pigs finding truffles. Like they'll find you. If you're investable and you can make them a multiple, like they will find you no matter where you are. But we got to get the companies to that point. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, but the question is, does the capital drive the startups, or startups then driving additional capital invest? You know what I'm saying? Is it which is
I think that's been the fundamental billion-dollar, question for a long time. That what is it?
Well,
The
the
proverbial.
money wants to make more money, right? Like that's not a mystery, right?
yeah.
Like no one's sitting on their powder, putting it in a money market account, right? Like they don't get to do fund two or fund five if like they're not making money in the vintage that they're sitting on, right? And their LPs don't, care that they made 3%. What they care is that they made at least 5x. And then they get to go on and do their second fund or their fifth fund or whatever it is. But we got to attract them. And how do we attract them if we don't have company? And they don't want to spend time on them. They want to sit on the board and do that, but they don't want to like come in and help you with your cap table. They don't want to come in and help you, have better terms and conditions on your website that are, going to work in Europe.
What I'm
I,
hearing from
I
all of
agree with you.
you is
I
I
agree with
hear
you. I think there's a dearth of startups in in the Treasure Valley and in Idaho, and we need to drive more startups here, right? So how do we? I mean, that's a big question. Maybe Scott was kind of getting to this is like, how do you do that? How do you, I mean, if you look at some of the other cities, adjacent to us and some of the, I mean, when you driving down the highway, you're looking at, all these different, companies, tech companies here, tech companies there. And these are really large companies, right? I mean, how do we get there? How
Yeah.
does Idaho get there? How does Boise and Treasure Valley get there? Where because of the problem you have is, if somebody gets laid off from one company, right? Their options are pretty limited in going to other companies if you don't have a density of other startups here, right? And so
Yep.
we need to drive more startups here. We need to get companies built here, right? And maybe this goes back to the capital piece of it, or is it that we encourage more startups to come here and start their initial lives here and evolve here in the Treasure Valley or Boise or Idaho. It's
I
I
think both can be true.
yeah, I'm always curious, how do we get there? How do we
Yeah.
get there? Does the government, I mean, does the state have to get involved? I mean, there's got to be a path here.
Well, I mean, okay, so now we're having a personal, like you know me, I've always been a fan of like if we could get a fund of funds, right, or something
yeah.
like that, that would never hurt,
Right.
and throw some more, grain at the chickens. Um,
I'd love I of those who are in this audience when we get to questions, I'd love to broaden this as just a topic to start with to hear other people's opinions. But fundamentally, clearly for Idaho, figuring out a better solution for this is critical. Melanie and Faisal took the big effort of starting Trailhead to try to initiate that process. I think sometimes Trailhead can be thought of as a co-working space, and that is a fundamental part of Trailhead really to cover some overhead expenses. But what Trailhead is attempting to be is an accelerator and an incubator to help entrepreneurs get off the ground, give them resources, give them a network, get mentors around them to do the real yeoman's work and doing the things that is kind of not sexy and unseen with not a lot of return for Trailhead. That was the brainchild of Faisal and some others, and Melanie was a part of that early push. We need more organizations like that. We need SBICs that are kind of like a fund of fund that are intended to give money into smaller businesses that have great cargers but don't yet have cash flow. I think there's a lot of elements to it, but I would just close off in saying there's a great Pew Research study that was done probably 4 years ago that looked at Idaho specifically and a few other markets to address this. And the kind of three high points they hit was education that's producing workers, founders who come out of Microns and others who have capital, as Faisal mentioned, and who are sprinkling that in the community. And third, a governmental system that's encouraging and kind of sitting in regulatorily to help encourage that. And so you can see in California how they're trying to address AI in a way that I think is a little bit prohibitive, and it might push AI companies to look more towards Idaho. And can Idaho take advantage of that and advertise it? Can we, like we did maybe for data centers 15 years ago?
Yeah, I think that's all really important. I know that at the Idaho Tech Council, I know several of you sit on that capital advisory group that we've started that formation of to really identify those barriers and how can we all collectively work towards that solution. And I'm glad that you did bring up AI, with our last few minutes before we open it up to Q&A from our audience. I think that we're seeing a lot of companies that are existing successful companies are integrating AI into their platform. Some are just specifically AI companies. And of course, I think some of this is still very early and may be hard to tell, but just in your lens so far, maybe some common AI mistakes that founders may potentially make in creating a risk or weaken their exit story. And maybe what's the best way to think about AI strategically, infrastructure, competitive advantage? How are you seeing AI integration play in exit strategies?
Well, the one
I
comment,
have the least to say here, so maybe I'll just say the one thing I do know, and then let Faisal and Melanie take over. To me, what the unifying factor has been is the moat. To what degree is what a company is doing defensible and unique that another AI company can't do or take over iteratively very quickly? That to me has been what I have seen deals be disrupted by in the last probably 18 months now. So I
Yeah.
have nothing else to add.
Thank you, Scott.
well, I mean, I was just going to say that one probably mistake that we probably all see is that companies, calling themselves AI company without any real foundation to support that claim. And it's tempting because it's kind of sometimes it's really hard to see the AI in action. So you can actually say I'm an AI company with little accountability. So that you got to as you go out into the world and trying to establish valuation around AI, you're going to have to like come to the table with what it is that how the AI is actually helping your company, whether it's, to make it more efficient, making your employees more efficient, having things go faster than it would have in the past. But you have to bring that to the table because like we talked about in due diligence, people are going to start digging in and you're going to have some support for what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just pulling your thread again, Faisal, like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, when you say you're an AI company, right? Like, what do you think you're saying? Like, are you just using it as a euphemism because you think it's going to get you more money or make you more attractive in the marketplace? Are you using AI as a tool, like similar to, automation from decades ago, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it like, hey, I'm utilizing this, so now I'm more profitable, like full circle moment, right? Like, hey, I'm more profitable now because instead of having 100 engineers, I'm using AI in a way that like my GSA went down and overhead went down and the product's the same, right? We haven't compromised our product. And so now you're more attractive because now you're people are like, oh, okay, well now my dollar is going to stretch further. Or are you saying like I'm an AI company, like I'm part of this revolution, right? Like I'm part of these new solutions, these new tools going forward. Like, what are you? And that I think is the mistake. And again, this is less of like the exit. This is more of the financing thing. And Diane, this part of my answer is more towards like the people who are going and getting financing, right? It's like they want to put AI on their, executive summary, and then the financer's like, well, what does that mean? And they're like, .ai, give me money, you know?
Right.
And like you just don't even get to exit, right? Like the real point of today is like, okay, exit. And it's like, okay, well, if you are actually an AI company, whether you're primary, secondary, tertiary part of that market, right? We're just starting to see secondary and tertiary uses of AI, right? But like when you're that, like, the multiples are astounding, but it's because people are betting on you being part of like the new world order, you know?
Yeah, and I think, for us at my company, we look at AI really as an efficiency engine, right? So we use it to make our analysts more effective, with their time. We use AI to help our customers make sense of all the large. I mean, we have large amounts of data that need to be processed. So, they need to make sense of that, and that's how we use AI, right? So AI isn't like the product, but it makes the product significantly better, right? And
Yeah, you reduce the load, reduce how long it takes, now you
exactly.
can spend that time somewhere else. It's opportunity cost that's not being lost anymore.
Right, and that's the distinction, but that's also something that you're going to have to prove up if you're in
Mhm.
in any type of transaction, right? You're going to have to actually show that that's what it does, right? And so people have to be ready to be able to do that.
Mhm.
Well, with our last 3 minutes, I'm going to run you guys through some lightning round fast questions. We'll go through them all because I think they're all really great. So be thinking in your mind. One thing every founder should do before raising money, and one thing that every founder should do before selling the company. And possibly that's the same thing, but let's
Yeah.
go, Melanie.
So I think I have the same answer for both questions. And maybe it's because I'm a service provider and I'm not saying go talk to your lawyer, but like what skill set are you devoid of, right? Is it law? Is it finance? Is it whatever? Whatever that skill set is, round it out and get your narrative straight. You know what I mean? Know what your strengths and your weaknesses are and make sure it got vetted by the people who are um, Faisal, you may remember this, and Diane, you may even too. But do you remember when Guy Kawasaki came to town like a million years ago, and we were all at the Egyptian watching him? I remember
Mhm.
him saying A people hire A plus, B hires C, C hires D, and that has stuck with me. And I think that that's something that I would say, whether you're a founder, executive, or whatever you are in life, right? Surround yourself with people who are better than you, and get the story as dialed in as you can, because people will just be like, I they won't tell you your baby's ugly. They'll just tell you, oh, sorry, got our dollar somewhere else, and you'll just never know.
Scott.
That was really well done. I'll take it from a different angle. I would boil it down to three things. If you're envisioning getting into the business, do you have a way that you can find to get to predictable, recurring revenue? Um, can you see a path for sustainable growth? And do you have defensibility? And I think that's the same answer. And when you're looking to sell, can you show predictable, recurring revenue? Do you have a sustainable growth, a nice carger? And do you have defensibility in the idea?
Oh, I love that answer. Faisal.
So I think we actually answered this before, but I'm going to raise it again. I mean, before you're actually going to raise money or before you actually sell, you should get a due diligence list from your counsel and make sure that everything that's on it is buttoned up. And this is what every founder on this call should hear. And don't wait until you need that list to start, right? Don't wait till the transactions happen. You should get that now. Start on day one. Keep good records of everything, every employee agreement, every contractor agreement, every decision that has a legal or financial footprint has to be recorded, right? So make sure that you're doing that from day one and make sure you've got all that now because it'll make it a lot easier down the road. Otherwise, you're going to have counsel running up tabs, trying to figure all that stuff out for you, and you don't want to do that.
Those are all great answers. And if you have not like felt a nudge in this panel today as an attendee, or if you're watching later, surround yourself. And Melanie said it best: surround yourself by people that know more than you. Figure out what it is that you can be really great and have a passion and vision for the product or service that you're creating, but recognize what you don't know and surround yourself with a team of people that do. And I've heard a lot about organization and really being able to know your numbers and tell that story. And we hope that, more and more Idaho companies start, grow, and have successful exits. With that, I'm so thankful for our panelists, for Scott Schling with KeyBank, Melanie Rabaki with Perkins Coie, and Faisal Shah. Thank you so much. You guys have been such an incredible panel for us today. And if you haven't engaged with the Idaho Tech Council before, we invite you to do that again. And definitely go to our website and check out our events and join us